Were you involved in the creative freedom side of GamerGate?
Um, on a intellectual level, yes, but I don't have any projects myself that I worked on.
Did you see social media campaigns by some political activists to change artistic elements in works?
Yes, I also saw people inside of specific areas in within gaming, for example, translation and localization, using their own political opinions to color their work. For example, deliberately mistranslating works from, let's say, Japan when it came over to the West. I saw that as well. So I saw a lot of people sort of corrupting the freedom of speech and corrupting creative freedom of some very talented people.
Do you think that criticizing these social media campaigns or the localization practices of some companies should have been included in the Gamergate conversation or should have been a separate conversation?
I personally, I think it should have been separate. I understand why it got thrown in with sort of Gamergate. I mean, it's all video games at the end of the day, and a lot of the people involved with one were also involved with the other. So I understand why they sort of ended up getting lumped in together. But I mean, when it comes to creative freedom, that's definitely a conversation worth having outside of the context of Gamergate, and it's still worth having to this day. A lot of the practices that I saw then, I still see now.
So for you, Gamergate was only about ethics in games journalism?
For me, Gamergate was about ethics in games journalism, along with this weird sort of hatred that games journalists seem to have for gamers. It was about journalists misusing their positions within the industry in multiple ways.
Some critics argue that Gamergate was mostly or entirely right wing. Do you think this is accurate?
Absolutely not. Most people I met during Gamergate were left wing liberal specifically. Now, when I say liberal, I do not mean it in the American sense of liberals. Um, I'm more talking about liberal in terms of believing in personal freedoms, believing that we should be free to express ourselves in any way we deem fit. That's the sort of political ideology I would align myself most closely with is a left wing liberal idea. In fact, I can't remember who exactly did it, but I remember during the time, maybe you'll be able to find it at some point. There, someone did a survey of Gamergate supporters and plotted their political beliefs down on a political compass. If you're familiar with those, top and bottom being liberal to authoritarian, left and right being left and right. And they found that most people who were pro Gamergate were actual left wing liberals, same as me. And just from my personal experience, I would back up that opinion that most of the people that I've met that were pro Gamergate were left wing liberal. In the same way that most people I met who were anti Gamergate were still left wing, but just authoritarian. It wasn't an argument of left versus right. It was an argument of authoritarian versus liberal. Liberal believing that we should have more freedom and more information about what the journalists are doing behind the scenes. We should be free to have access to that information. We should be free to have access to know what biases the person that we're reading has. Um, Whether the authoritarian side of it would argue that no, you shouldn't have the freedom to have that information. We know better because we're in this position that we're in, whatever that position may be. Now, obviously, I'm butchering their side of the argument because I don't hold it myself. I'm sure if you could find someone who was anti Gamergate, they could be a lot more eloquent with their understanding of their political position. I just don't hold it myself, so I'm not going to be able to be as articulate.
Yes, I definitely want to interview some anti-Gamergate people. And there were two surveys done. Brad Glasgow's survey and Game Politics did a survey as well on the political beliefs of GamerGate supporters.
Hmm.
Have your have your politics changed since GamerGate or due to GamerGate?
Um, Not changed, but I've definitely become more active. My opinions hold the same for the most part. It's just I've become a lot more active in the conversation, I guess.
Are you okay with gaming sites criticizing games through a political or religious lens, such as a Marxist lens, feminist lens, Christian lens, or other lens?
Yes. As long as it is obvious that that's where you're coming from, yes, I think it would actually be very interesting. I would probably read it myself. Um, but don't do that and say that you're impartial because you're not impartial and you're not being impartial. But if you're open about what you're doing and the goals that you are trying to have with your deconstruction of whatever gaming title that you happen to pick that day, I think it could be very informative. I think it could be very interesting, and I hope more articles, more videos, more YouTubers, more whoever um, take up more different opinions, different stances, and look at games in a variety of different ways. I think it could be very interesting.
Some people say that Gamergate was the first battle of the culture war. Do you have any thoughts on that framing?
Oh, yeah, that is a can of worms, isn't it? I definitely see that it for some people it was a catalyst. I think similar to me, there was a large group of people who had political opinions and had political beliefs, but maybe weren't as vocal about it and weren't as active within the political sphere as they now are. I think for a lot of people, Gamergate was the thing that got them passionate about politics, as it was sort of their primary hobby that was suddenly being criticized and that was suddenly um, sort of being put under the microscope. I think that led to a lot of people suddenly becoming more politically active. Definitely, yeah.